Thank you everyone for being with us. Today we're going to talk just several different ideas. Perhaps not a beginning, a middle, and an end, but just some ideas. Some ideas that center around the topic of going deeper. Going deeper. What do we mean by going deeper? Where do we go to go deeper? Why should we go deeper? Is it even something that we want to do? Now, in the email last night, I included a little anecdote that I'm pretty sure I got it from Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich. And he relates the story of a man who wanted to mine for gold. I don't recall where. I don't recall if he said where. But the man went out and purchased the digging equipment, the drilling equipment, set up his stake, got his investors to give him money to get started. And he went about digging for gold. And after quite some time, he grew weary. He'd been digging for a long time, he had spent a lot of money, and he didn't have anything to show for it. So he decided to sell, to cut his losses and to sell. So he sold all of his equipment to another man. And that man called in a geologist to make a survey. And the geologist told him, keep digging, keep digging. So that man restarted the drilling equipment and he started to dig again, and in just 3 feet he hit a vein of gold. Now, Napoleon Hill was writing from the level of what I call the level 1 consciousness, the fundamentalist consciousness, or the dogmatic consciousness. Napoleon Hill was, he said in his book that the reason the things that he was teaching worked was because there was a spiritual law behind them. But he would not go into the spiritual law unless people thought he was trying to convert them to a new religion, and he was not. He was simply trying to explain to them how things worked and to tell them how to work them. And from his point of view, the reason that they wanted to do this, the reason that they would want to learn how things worked and how to work them, was to accomplish something, to achieve a burning desire. And he tells us this over and over again in his book, that we have to take this desire, whatever it is, this thing that we desire, and we have to raise that desire to a white hot flame. In the Eastern tradition, when we talk about spiritual growth, there's a quote that is used a lot, and its significance kind of grows on us as we grow spiritually. We tend to understand more and more just what, whoever wrote this down, just what they were trying to say. But it says, do not seek God unless you are seeking God as earnestly as you would be seeking a pond if your hair was on fire. How much do you want it? In our culture, we say, how bad do you want it? But it's not bad. How good do you want it? How good do you want it? So Napoleon Hill, writing from his point of view, his world view, and you have to remember, he went out and he was working in the material world. He was working in the world of appearances. He went and he interviewed very successful people. Andrew Carnegie kind of financed and set him on this mission, gave him the idea and gave him the introductions. But Napoleon Hill went around and he interviewed the most successful people of the time. Henry Ford, who, by the way, Henry Ford, we know at least read Ralph Waldo Trine. But Napoleon Hill went around and interviewed the most successful people in the world and tried to write down what he learned. And it became eventually published as Think and Grow Rich. So he was looking at it from the realm of, or the view of, how do I accomplish or achieve something in this world? And how do I have a set of techniques by which I can invoke this law that he never explained, invoke this law, and set it in motion to produce for me, or to accomplish for me, or to move me to accomplish, however we want to look at it, but to get something out there, to get something out in the material world. Business success, social success, money, whatever. It didn't matter. It didn't matter to the law. Just use the law according to the way he taught it, and you would get it. We were talking about this the other night, or a couple of weeks ago maybe, in the Skype group, and I'll mention it again. Lori and I used to use this. We had a little clip from the beginning of the movie Amadeus, about the life of Mozart. And it's a great little clip that kind of really sets the mood, kind of puts us in kind of this feeling. And the scene is that young Mozart, who's maybe 12, 13 years old, I guess, at the beginning of the movie, it's a starry night, and he's crawling out his bedroom window, and he's running across the fields behind this house, and he goes down to the edge of a pond. There's a pond in this farm. And he takes off his clothes, and he goes and he swims out into the middle of the pond, and he rolls over on his back. And he looks up at the sky. And the filmmaker has us, looking at him very closely. We can see his face. And then the shot kind of looks up and it shows us the vastness of the sky, and then it looks back to his face, but then it kind of pulls out, the picture pulls out, the camera pulls back. And when you start to see the pond, when you start to see the water in the pond, because it's nighttime, it's like a mirror. And the pond is perfectly reflecting the starry sky. And after a while, you lose perspective. You don't know which way is up. You don't know which way is down. It's as if young Mozart is in the sphere of stars. They go from horizon to horizon. They create a sphere, but because of the mirror effect of the pond, it looks like it goes underneath him as well. And you get the sensation that he is just floating in space, in the center of the universe. Kind of the awe, kind of sublime, kind of wow. And if we think about that image, if we think about that, that's where we are, physically. That's where we are. Now, we can't see it all the time because we are too close. We are too close to the trees to see the forest, We are surrounded by the houses that we live in, the buildings that we work in, We see the ground around us. We don't see the stars as much as our ancestors did, how familiar they were with them. People could tell what time it was by where the stars were. They could tell what month it was by which stars were on the horizon at sunrise or sunset. They could navigate by the stars, They were very familiar with the heavens. So you can imagine being on a boat out at sea in the middle of the night. If you could turn off all the lights and you could look up, what would that sky look like? But you see, that's where we are. We're on this tiny, tiny piece of rock that is floating in space. And where does space end? Where does space begin? We read the headlines in the news, and you read things like using the Hubble telescope that scientists can almost see back to the beginning of the universe, almost see back to the beginning. And I've got to ask myself, well, what do they expect to find after that or before that? What was before the beginning? What do they think is going to happen? We're just going to get to the end of the universe? And then what? And then what? Nothing is there. Where did the nothing come from, you see? Another universe is there? My point is will we ever be able to plumb the depths of space? When we look out there, if we can get the perspective of Amadeus floating in that pond, if we can understand just how vast the universe is, how far it can go, it goes beyond our ability to intellectually comprehend. Can we get that feeling? And can we get that feeling without feeling hopeless, without feeling small, without feeling insignificant? You know, the old-time religion, worm in the dust kind of thing. Can we get that feeling that there is something more incredible than we know, than we're capable of knowing? It's more incredible than we will ever know. And yet we are part of it, and we are an important part of it. Remember I said a couple of weeks ago, we have to feel like we belong. We have to feel like we belong, that we're not interlopers here. We belong. Now, we occasionally have to make time to bring ourselves back in touch with nature, as I'm describing. We may have to take a vacation. We may have to go down to the beach. We may have to go camping out on a mountaintop. Maybe we just go on the internet and we look at the images from the Hubble telescope. But from time to time, we have to bring ourselves back into our conscious awareness to remind ourselves that, my God, there's something so much bigger than we are, and we are part of it. And the reason that we have to do that, even though it is there all the time, you know, the eclipse is coming up for us next Monday. And we will be able to see the stars in the middle of the day because the stars are always there. See, the stars are always there. But we don't always see them because the light of the sun obscures them. We don't always see them because the clouds in the sky at night obscure them. We don't always see them because we're not looking. Our mind is someplace else. So it is very easy for us to be distracted. It is very easy for us to be distracted by all of the things that are going on in this world around us. It's very easy for us to be distracted by all of the problems we have to solve. It's very easy for us to be distracted by all of the things that people give us for the purpose of distracting us. We have to make the effort. We have to make the effort. But as much as there is out there, as we turn our senses out there, as we turn our eyes and our ears and our telescopes, our antennas, all of the things that we're doing to search for extraterrestrial life, we're looking out there. We're looking away from us. And perhaps that is a distraction as well. as very interesting as it is, as fascinating as it might be, I love looking at the pictures from Hubble. I love reading how some of the greatest minds that we've ever known can take the data from an image that was taken on a telescope, and they can tell so much about the planets that they're now finding, the other galaxies that they're finding. I mean, it's fascinating to me that they can do that. But is that the most important thing? Now remember, that goes on forever. We can't plumb the depths of it. It goes on forever. But it's only temporary. It's only temporary. Buddhism asks us to consider that everything is impermanent. Everything. The houses in which we live are impermanent. The boundaries of the countries in which we live are constantly changing. I know many of you remember when we actually had books for encyclopedias, and every year you would have to buy the annual update to the encyclopedia. So you had these 20 or 40 volumes of the encyclopedia, but then whatever year that was published, every year after that you got 1 or 2 volumes which were kind of updates. The majority of the content of the updates to the yearly encyclopedia was new maps, because the boundaries of countries was constantly changing. Everything is impermanent. The national pride that people feel is impermanent. The political parties are impermanent. The continents themselves are impermanent. The planet, the sun, the galaxy, and the universe itself are all impermanent. Yet we're fascinated by it. We want to know more about it. But there's something more important. There's something that goes even beyond the physical that cannot be fathomed, and that is mind. That is consciousness. Everything that we can see out there, everything that Napoleon Hill was pointing us towards out there, everything out there is an effect. Is an effect. Even the violence that we see in the news is an effect. And the cause lies in consciousness. If we truly wish to see change, there must be a change in consciousness. I suggest to you that all of the techniques that Napoleon Hill documented and wrote down and encouraged us to use were techniques specifically designed to produce a change in consciousness. And if that change in consciousness took place, the circumstances of the one using the techniques would change. Now, this is nothing new. We've known this for thousands of years. What the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. If we think about it then, where is it better to work? Out in the world of appearances, out in the world of effect, or back in the world of consciousness, back in the world of cause? We can spend lifetimes lifetimes dealing with symptoms. And every time we think we have the symptoms eradicated, something else will arise. Something else will arise because there is a cause. There is a cause there. When we were going through the era, I guess, of the 70s and the 80s, and we had lots of self-help books and motivational books and a lot of things about the power of your subconscious mind and programming yourself for success and all of those kind of things. There was a graphic that was used quite often, and you've seen it, I'm sure. It's the iceberg floating in the water. And the graphic would say that the tip of the iceberg only represents about 10% of the iceberg. And the other 90% of the iceberg lies submerged where you can't see it. And the point that the presenters were trying to make was that our mind is like that, our consciousness is like that. The little bit that we really know about ourselves, or perhaps the little bit that we know, is that which is sticking its head above the water. But the vast majority of the human consciousness is unknown to us, or at least we are unaware of it. And what all of these different self-help books were trying to tell us is we only use 10% of your potential. You only use 10% of your capability. If you could only find a way to enlist that other 90%, well, just think about what you could do. And again, Napoleon Hill's techniques were geared towards activating that other 90%. And it was an interesting graphic, and I used it myself in many of the courses that I delivered. But you have to stop and ask yourself, well, how do you know it's 90%? I mean, you wouldn't know if it was 90% unless you could have measured it, right? And nobody can measure it. So to say that there's 10% above the level of conscious awareness and 90% below is just made up stuff. It's just an example. It's just an illustration to kind of get people to consider that there's more going on than what sticks its head above the surface. But if we really want to stop and think about this, think about what Dr. Holmes told us about this. What Carl Jung told us about the collective unconscious. That what we are at that level below conscious awareness is we are part of all mind. We are part of all consciousness. What we call our subconscious mind is just that part of the subconscious mind that we use. At that level of being, we are connected to, we are one with all mind. And Dr. Holmes tells us that no one has ever, or no one will ever, plumb the depths of mind. So we look out into the heavens through our telescopes, and it's almost as if we envision it can end, that it will come to an end, that somehow we will just reach the absolute limit, and we'll be at the very, very beginning of the universe. But if we turn within, there's no end. We can't even envision an end. Forever and ever and ever, we will be going deeper. We will be plumbing the depths of all consciousness for all time. So why is this important to us? Why do we care? Well, the first thing is that everything out there is impermanent. Excuse me. What is not impermanent? What is it that is not impermanent? Do you remember when you were 2 years old? Do you remember when you were 5 years old? Do you remember when you were 10 years old? Do you remember the body that you had then? A small child's body. Well, that body's gone. That body turned to dust a long time ago. Every cell in that body has been replaced. Every one of them. So you were a small child, you looked at your body and said, this is me, but that's not you. Because that's gone and you're still here. But where are you? If you're not the body, which is impermanent, but there's a continuity, what is that continuity? And it is your consciousness. You are the observer. You are the witness to the physical change. So why do we want to spend our time becoming more and more familiar with that which is impermanent when we can be spending that time becoming more and more familiar with that which is permanent? Know thyself. Know thyself, the sign over the oracle, the Temple of Delphi. Know thyself. If we look at the divide in religious thinking between the East and the West, the East was telling people to go within. The West is telling people to go without. What is it that is not impermanent? Should we be spending our time there? What is it that really matters? Should we be going deeper and spending our time there? So just from the sake of investing the time that we have wisely, it would seem to make sense that we should be spending at least as much time, if not more time, going within than going without. But there's even more. You see, everything without is an effect. And if we spend our time going within and we can get closer to cause, to consciousness, to changing consciousness, to changing our consciousness, then the effects will take care of themselves. We don't have to learn more and more about how the effects work. We don't have to learn how to become more effective and more efficient in dealing with that which is impermanent and changing. Because that which is impermanent and changing will change the way it needs to change to support us, in our growth. So here's, if we look at Napoleon Hill and where he left off, and we look at where we are going, Napoleon Hill said there is a spiritual law in the universe that works. And I'm not going to tell you about that law because if I do, you will think that I'm trying to convert you to a new religion, and I don't want to do that. I just want to teach you how to be successful. I want to teach you the techniques that successful people used so they could become successful. We want to know what that spiritual law is. We want to know how that spiritual law works. Now, at first, when we want to learn what that spiritual law is and how it works, our intention may be quite the same as Napoleon Hill's, quite the same as the people who would read his book. We want to produce changes in our lives. We want better health. We want better wealth, better relationships, a better job. We want love. We want friendship. We want all of the human things. And Joel Goldsmith says what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring God into our human experience and saying, God, make our human lives better. We do that. We do that. It's normal and it's natural, and we do that. But Goldsmith tells us at some point we realize that our human lives are impermanent. All of these things that we're trying to get God to come into our lives to make better are only going away anyway. So instead of trying to learn how to more effectively and more efficiently use the spiritual law to produce a better material life, we need to go deeper. We need to dig deeper. As St. Paul said, who are we? What is man? What is mankind? What are we human beings? What are we that God should even be mindful of us? You see. Why is the spiritual law there? How does the spiritual law work? What difference does it make? Go deeper. Go deeper. Everything that ought to be known is known. Everything that ought to be done can be done. The intelligence that can create a universe out of nothing can deal with anything. But do we want to use it? Do we want to learn how to cooperate with it and stop right there? There's nothing wrong with learning how to use it. There's nothing wrong with learning how to cooperate with it. But what happens to us along the way is that at some point, Dr. Holmes tells us, with all of our getting, we have to get God. As we start to dig deeper, as we start to go deeper, we start to recognize that the reason this all works is because I am one with it. I am part of it. That perfect love has created me out of itself for its own purpose, which is to love. It has numbered every hair on my head. It knows every bone. It cares for me as it cares for itself. See, and at this point, when we get to this point, everything else was like an enticement. It's kind of like following the trail of breadcrumbs until we get to the castle. At this point, our heart starts to become more open than it has ever been before. And at this point, our desire is simply to be at home with our beloved. To be at home with God. Aquinas said, I ask nothing of thee, not even thy love. I only want thee. We have to dig deeper. We have to dig deeper. So what happens to us keep in mind that we are all here and we are all kind of throwing off this cloak of ignorance, as the Hindus would tell us. We're awakening from the Adam dream, as Goldsmith would tell us. Right? And he refers to, in the book of Genesis, we're told that God put Adam into a deep sleep. But nowhere does it tell us that Adam woke up. So we all enter this life, if you want to think of it this way, we all enter this life in this state of deep sleep. And we are all in this process of awakening from the dream. We're all in this process, as Plato puts it, we're all in the process of realizing that we have been raised in the cave and there's a whole other reality outside. There's a whole other world outside. But the outside is the inside. The outside is the inside. So we become distracted. The Buddhists tell us we're in the game, and the game, somebody already started the game. Somehow we're in the game and the game is being played and we don't even know what the rules are, you know. For those in North Carolina, everybody knows Andy Griffith. He's one of the patron saints of North Carolina, I'm sure. But he got his start. One of his first big hits was a comedy album that he did back in the 50s. And it's called What It Was Football. And it's about a poor country boy who kind of wandered into town from the farm and stumbled across a football game on Saturday. And he was trying to figure out what it was. And of course, what it was football. So that's your homework assignment this week. Go to the internet and search for Andy Griffith, What It Was Football. It's still funny after all these years. We're in the game and we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to understand what's going on, and we're looking all around us and we're trying to weigh and analyze and touch everything out there. And at some point we have to awaken and say it's not out there. All of that's nice, all of that's fascinating, all of that's interesting. But all of that is impermanent. And we have to desire. As Napoleon Hill says, it all starts with desire. We have to desire to know God. Now what happens to us is our journey. There's a cartoon, I don't know if it still exists, but you know, years ago we used to get the Sunday paper, and the kids always loved the comics in the Sunday paper, and there was one in there called The Family Circus, about all these little kids growing up, a mom and dad and all these little kids growing up. And I'll never forget, there was this one that kind of showed where the kid was supposed to go from point A to point B. You know, it was like a block on a map. But then it showed the actual course that the kid took, you know, over to the candy store and over to the playground, and just kind of serendipitous route, you know, just went everywhere before he got back home. And we do that. See, we do that. We're allowed to wander. We're allowed to go off and have our experiences, and they are an important part of our spiritual growth. And we start to go home. See, we feel the call and we start to go home. And then we get distracted again. If you go and you read the legends of King Arthur and look at them from the point of view as allegories for our spiritual growth, they take on a whole different meaning. You know, as kids growing up, we saw the movies about the knights, and of course, and you had Camelot in the 60s, and the musical, and all these different kind of romantic versions of the Knights of the Round Table and chivalry and all these kind of things. But go back and look at them as being kind of stories about the evolution of our soul. And there's one that strikes me. There's one that really speaks to me, that kind of fits in with what we're talking about today. You have to go deeper. You have to go deeper. You can't stop. You can't stop just 3 feet from gold. You can't stop. You have to go deeper. And like all of the quests, you know, and this is why the stories appeal to us. They all follow the same formula. Joseph Campbell made it popular in The Hero's Journey, but the formula existed long before Campbell. So the knight feels this urge to go on a quest. He's given the quest, or he discovers the quest, and he has to go on this quest. Now, in many of the fables of the Knights of the Round Table, they were searching for the Holy Grail. And in our culture, we think, well, this was the cup that Jesus drank out of. It was not. It's the presence of God within. It is our soul. It is the Christ within. See? So the knights are questing, and they're trying to find their own soul. And this knight goes off, and of course, as all the knights do, he has to face all these challenges, these tests, these trials, these things that he has to grow through before he's worthy to finish this quest. And that's all of us, right? We all grow, we all learn, we all go through experiences, we all kind of deepen our understanding of who and what we are. And finally the knight arrives at the holy city. This is what he's been questing for, was to reach the holy city. And when he reaches the holy city, he's welcomed as a king. And the people bring him in, and they say, "Sir Knight, we've been waiting for you to come here to be our leader." And they give him his crown, and they give him his robe, and they sit him on his throne. And there's a knock at the door. And it's a page from Camelot. And the page says, "Sir Knight, have you forgotten? Have you forgotten your family back in Camelot? Have you forgotten your business back in Camelot? Have you forgotten all of the things you need to do?" And the king tells the people, "I must leave. I have some unfinished business. I need to go and take care of it. But I'll return." And the knight goes back to Camelot. And he gets involved in his old business, and his old family, and his old ways, and his old friends. And he forgets the holy city. He'll get there someday. Someday he'll go back. But right now he's distracted. He has other things to do. So this is kind of the story for all of us. We know that there is something deep within us. We know it. It's an instinctive, intuitive knowing that there is something within us that is so much greater than we've ever imagined. We look out there, and we look and we can say there's something out there that is so much greater than we ever imagined. But what is inside is greater still. And we move towards it, and we get afraid of it, and we move back away from it, and we go back and let ourselves be distracted. And then we move towards it again, and we get afraid of it, and we move back away from it, and we let ourselves get distracted again. But at some point, we must come to the desire, to the intention of moving all the way. As Rumi tells us, it's like the moth being drawn to the flame, and we keep flying into the glass, the hurricane glass that sits down over the candle. We keep flying into that glass, and we beat our head against it. But at some point, one day, that glass is lifted up, and we will fly into the flame for the bliss of being home, of being united. So we have techniques. Napoleon Hill gave people techniques to be successful in the world of business, and we have techniques to be successful in the world of prayer, in the world of spiritual growth, in the world of treatment. We have meditation. We have affirmations. We have treatments. We have visualization, but we have to use them. We have to use them. We have to take time and make time and be disciplined about our spiritual growth. And part of that time has to be for no other purpose than to be alone with God. Not to pray about anything, not to think about anything, but just to go deeper. Just to go deeper. Whatever it is that we want, whatever it is out there that we want, pales in comparison with that which is in here that wants us. We just have to go deeper. We just have to go deeper. So Napoleon Hill gave us the example of the man at the mine as a little inspirational story that says, don't quit. Don't quit. Find another way. Get another opinion. Don't quit. Keep going. Keep going. When our kids are little, we read them the story about the little engine that could, and we tell them, keep trying, keep trying. Keep going. We love the underdog story in this culture. Let's think of the night in the holy city. That's us. We have to dig deeper. We have to keep going. We have to use the power of self-awareness that we have been given to go within, to find that which has never been disturbed, to find that which has been waiting in quiet repose, to find that presence that says, you're home. Welcome. Go deeper. There's nothing else worth having. Go deeper. And so it is.